I don't remember how I killed him.
She had fried the head in a deep-fat fryer.
All I remember, I get up, like I said, and I found him in a trash bag.
She stated that she had cooked some of his ribs in the oven, put some barbecue sauce on it, and actually tasted it.
She said it tasted sweet, just like I like it.
I wish I knew how I killed him, though.
This seemingly composed lady was 23-year-old Omema Ari Nelson, who had just discovered her 56-year-old husband, William Edwin Nelson, otherwise known as Bill, dead, and appeared unable to fully process the situation. However, what awaited everyone was far more sinister than anyone could imagine.
The downstairs neighbor heard the garbage disposal running and grinding the entire weekend. Like a motor under stress.
However, only if she could have stopped just at the killing of her husband on Thanksgiving Day of November 28, 1991. But instead, she decided to go far beyond any human could think of.
When there was blood all over them, and you want to say, he must die, he must die.
The truth investigators would soon uncover was far darker than anyone dared to believe.
It ranks as the most gruesome crime scene that I've ever encountered.
And that was kind of in the back of everybody's mind at that time. Are we going to turn up another Jeffrey Dahmer?
On December 1st, 1991, a frantic call to U.S. Emergency Services set off a chilling investigation into a murder that would haunt Orange County forever. Jose Esquivel, a friend of Omema Nelson, reported that his friend had killed her husband, who reportedly abused her and was now offering him $75,000 to help dispose of the body. The police quickly mobilized, racing to uncover the truth behind this horrifying claim. When officers located Omema driving her husband Bill's red 1975 Corvette, they found eerie trash bags in the vehicle. Bill Nelson, as he was known, had been reported missing after failing to show up for work following Thanksgiving weekend. They stopped her car and sorted through the stuff kept in it as Omema looked on quietly. In the car, they found something unsettling, which further investigation determined to be human flesh. This shocking discovery led to Omema being immediately taken into custody for questioning, where she seemed fully cooperative.
She immediately denied everything that had been reported by Mr. Esquivel to the police department. She told officers that she had no way to get in touch with him. She really hadn't lived with him very long.
She seems cooperative, but the answers that she's giving to questions are a little bit bizarre.
The investigation then led police to their apartment in Costa Mesa, California, where they stumbled upon a scene that would become notorious in true crime history. As they entered the apartment, they found Bill, but not in the way they had anticipated, and it seemed like they were walking into a slaughterhouse. Bill's remains were stuffed into suitcases, buried beneath piles of cardboard boxes. The police discovered human flesh and organs wrapped in bags on the floor, alongside a broken table lamp and a heavy clothing iron stained with blood and human hair.
As you began to look more closely, you'd see a little drop of blood on the doorknob, you'd see a little drop of blood on a wall, maybe some blood on a carpet.
Once we started opening the trash bags, it became apparent that there were more body parts.
As officers continued their grim search, they found Bill's bedroom in utter disarray. The bedpost had been ripped off and splintered, and the mattress was soaked with blood. The most shocking discovery awaited them in the freezer. Bill's head wrapped in tinfoil, revealing stab wounds and showing signs of having been deep fried. They also discovered 2 of the bedposts broken and blood-soaked, indicating Bill had been tied up and killed mercilessly.
She had fried the head in a deep-fat fryer, so it was pretty badly burned. It was completely soaked with blood through and through, as well as the box springs.
It ranks as the most gruesome crime scene that I've ever encountered.
In the bathroom, the horror escalated. Bill's chest and torso hung over the bathtub, skinned and carved, left to bleed into the tub as if it were a butcher shop. His body had been castrated. Moving into the kitchen, police found pots and pans left on the stove containing what appeared to be a stew. Among the vegetables and turkey meat were Bill Nelson's hands submerged in the concoction with bruises on them. It appeared that he'd been tightly tied up before being murdered. In the trash bin, bits of his hips were mixed with cranberry sauce, a grim twist on Thanksgiving leftovers. This horrifying tableau painted a picture of unimaginable horror. The chilling details of this case would go on to draw comparisons to fictional horror stories as investigators worked to uncover how such a tragedy could unfold within what was supposed to be a loving marriage.
It appears to be organs. We have a coroner's investigator that responds to the scene. And he said, yeah, you see little black spots on the lung? I said, yeah. He said, that's carbon, and that's from smoking.
At that point, we had a homicide.
His hip area was found disguised with the attributes of a Thanksgiving meal: peas, corn, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce. His hands were found in a fryer. His head was found in the freezer, amidst frozen vegetables and frozen foods.
They find garbage bags inside suitcases that have been just saturated with fluids and flesh, and there's blood everywhere. I mean, this was literally unbelievable.
With Bill's dismembered body, the police couldn't immediately identify the cause of death due to the body's condition. The officers were certain that it was Bill, but to be fully sure and to unravel the mystery behind this soul-shaking murder, they delved deep into Omema's past, and what they discovered was going to be among the most disturbing discoveries of their careers. Omema Ari Nelson's life began in a small, impoverished farming village in southern Egypt near the Sudanese border in 1968. Born into a conservative Arabic household as one of 16 children, her early years were marked by hardship and trauma. Her father had a bad temper and was abusive, subjecting her to both physical and assault from a young age. The scars of her childhood were deepened by the horrific tradition of female circumcision, which she endured at the age of just 7. This was a painful procedure that left her in constant agony and made intimacy nothing but a source of terror. As she grew older, her mother made the difficult decision to divorce her father and move to Cairo, an Egyptian city infamous for its homes built around cemeteries, known as the City of the Dead. In this bleak environment, Omema faced further challenges. The agony she endured not only affected her ability to form intimate relationships, but also instilled a profound sense of fear and vulnerability. Despite all the hardships, Omema blossomed into a strikingly beautiful and vibrant young woman. By the time she turned 18 in 1986, Omema's life took yet another dramatic twist. She met Roger Stainbrook, an American oil worker working on contract in Egypt. Drawn to him and the promise of a new life, she got romantically involved with him. Though her mother was hesitant about the cross-cultural relationship, she eventually accepted the relationship with a possible fear that no Egyptian man would accept her. With the hopes of freedom and new opportunities, Omema moved with him to Texas, United States. But what awaited her there was only another chapter of hardship. Soon, the cracks in their relationship began to show, and before long, their marriage ended. Still a teenager, Omema found herself stranded and alone in a foreign city with only a grasp of English and no one to turn to. Determined to survive, Omema took on odd jobs like being a nanny or waitress, but these alone couldn't sustain her. She even ended up getting arrested briefly for robbing a pharmacy. And at another point, she attacked 2 security guards who caught her stealing in a department store. She worked as a part-time model too, but soon realized that her beauty could be used for her better survival.
She had this attraction to men, and she could play pool, and she was very articulate and very friendly.
What she was good with was her sexuality. She could get men to do things for her, and she used her sexuality to get what she wanted.
She lured men in, entrancing them with her striking appearance, only to rob them once they were at their most vulnerable. A risky game she played to survive. Omema would get men in a compromising position, tying them up, using a weapon, and stealing from them. She robbed multiple men with this tactic, but no one came forward to report against her as the officers believed they were embarrassed. She made her living out of these things until in October 1991, she met 56-year-old Bill, who seemed to be a generous and kind man to her. He was an ex-Marine and ex-pilot and now worked part-time as a computer programmer and messenger at Cannon Mortgage in Tustin.
She met Mr. Nelson much like she met the other men at a Costa Mesa bar near his home. He coddled her and caressed her and treated her like a lady. He loved her. He was kind of what we might term in California old school, still wanted to have a relationship but wouldn't unless he married her.
Bill was 33 years older than Omema, But their relationship quickly escalated, and he proposed to her just 2 days after meeting her. The two hit it off and were married within a month, despite the fact that Bill was still legally married to his first wife.
They got in his red Corvette and they drove straight to Phoenix, where they found a justice of the peace and got married.
She and Bill spent their whirlwind honeymoon visiting his relatives in Texas and Arkansas, though it was a tense introduction. Bill's family had strong reservations about the marriage. Not only was he twice her age, but Omaima was younger than some of Bill's own children, making the relationship hard for them to accept. Still, Omaima charmed everyone she met with her gentle yet clever demeanor, casting an impression that seemed to ease some doubts, at least on the surface. Once the honeymoon ended and they moved into Bill's apartment in Costa Mesa, California, the cracks began to show. On the surface, they appeared to be a typical couple, but their seemingly ordinary life concealed something deep and unsettling, as claimed by Omaima about her marriage.
That her husband had raped her, had beat her up, had put her through a few days of bondage.
Even on Thanksgiving Day, Bill reportedly tried to abuse her, and Omaima responded with a tactic she was well known to use.
There must have been something special or different about Omaima's husband. We know he wasn't the first man she tied up. I think the earlier crimes of tying men up and robbing them helped her become more confident. There was something about him that she felt the need to destroy him.
This time, Omaima didn't stop and killed her husband. According to her claims, Bill sexually assaulted her that night, and as it was already a contentious act for her, she couldn't control her rage. Omaima took a knife and stabbed Bill repeatedly before beating him to death with a clothing iron.
She got mad and hit him, and then ended up saying, "Oh my God, he's now knocked out," went and got a knife and stabbed him. And then she goes, "Uh-oh, what am I going to do with the body?"
After committing this heinous crime, she did something which was way more terrifying than killing her own husband.
For a woman to deliberately murder is rare enough. For a woman to dismember a murder victim is far more rare. She was depraved to her very bones.
She, piece by piece, hung up his torso in the shower with coat hangers and other things in order to let the blood dry out.
Omaima had killed her husband on Thanksgiving Day, November 28, 1991. Over the following days, she dismembered his body, a grim task she continued until December 2, 1991, when she finally found herself exhausted and unable to continue alone. Seeking assistance, she approached her friend Jose, claiming her husband had assaulted her and she was seeking his help. But instead, horrified, Jose went straight to the police, setting the stage for a chilling investigation.
She said that she'd cut up her husband and put him in trash bags and needed some type of a truck or a vehicle to help her get the trash bags and dispose of them.
Now, it was crystal clear to the officers that the body they'd found indeed belonged to Bill, and his wife was the murderer, but her claims indicated otherwise. Omaima's claims of assault further seemed to be true with the marks on her body, but at the same time, she did something that made her suspicious.
Omaima was obviously distraught. She was very upset, as if she'd been crying. She had visible injuries to her face and her breast and her arms.
Although Omaima denied any help, the officers sent her for a medical examination to determine the actual cause of her injuries.
She was sent to the hospital for a sexual assault examination, and also to document all these injuries. She has a lot of lacerations and contusions and bruises on her body.
The investigators also contacted Bill's stepdaughter to discover anything unusual they could have noticed. It turned out he did contact her before being killed by his own wife.
Bill Nelson talked to his stepdaughter on Thanksgiving Day and told her that he had a turkey dinner and with all the fixins and everything. Everything was great. There were no problems.
As the investigation deepened, detectives turned to Bill's neighbors, hoping someone might have noticed something unusual. They did recall hearing a strange sound that night, a noise that had seemed ordinary at the time, but in light of recent events, took on a horrifying new significance.
The downstairs neighbor heard the garbage disposal running and grinding the entire weekend. Like a motor under stress.
It takes a great deal of effort to cut it up into multiple pieces, to package all those pieces so that they don't look human.
Thanksgiving, a day meant for celebration, became a day of horror for Bill Nelson as he suffered a gruesome death at the hands of his young bride. What began with his murder only escalated into savagery. In the days that followed, Omaima set to work dismembering his body with a disturbing methodical precision. Piece by piece, she tore apart his remains, crossing lines of cruelty. When authorities finally uncovered the evidence, they suspected that this level of savagery didn't come from a first-time offender.
25 or more wounds to the skull. It was a very violent death.
The way the body was cut up was actually done fairly professional.
Cut with such precision that the coroner's office was very concerned. Had she done this before?
What came next would haunt the investigators for years. When the medical examiners weighed all the remains found in Omaima's apartment and compared them to Bill's records, they realized something horrifying. Nearly 180 pounds of them were missing. Given the grim discoveries already made, it became apparent to the officers what could have happened. The implications were unthinkable, and the missing weight suggested that Omaima had disposed of large portions of his body. The police arrested Omaima the same day she was reported by her friend and was brought in for questioning. As haunting as these findings were about Bill, no one could have prepared them for the horrific revelation lurking in the depths of a hidden secret room. When they asked about the murder, Omaima quickly attempted to shift the entire focus of the case, taking the investigation down an unexpected and troubling path.
The interview with Omaima was 3 to 4 hours. And throughout the entire time, she never really sat down. She'd talk in third person. She'd talk about hallucinating.
When the officers asked her about the murder of Bill and why she killed him, she claimed that she did not kill her husband.
Did you tell Jose the day that you killed your husband?
Tell my husband? He wished.
You wish, huh?
No, I did not.
You didn't tell Jose that?
He didn't ask it. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
When officers confronted Omaima about the human flesh they discovered in the car she was driving, her response left them speechless. At that moment, the true depths of her detachment and cruelty became horrifyingly clear, making them realize that they were dealing with something far darker than they'd anticipated.
They thought that he killed somebody who had been in 4 years.
He was discovered with a plane full of marijuana.
He ends up doing a federal prison sentence for drug smuggling.
And stuff like that.
Bill had indeed gotten into some legal troubles when he was a pilot for smuggling drugs and electronics into Mexico from an airport in Texas. He'd gotten caught and had gone to prison for 4 years, but this was not the case here. As the officers called her in for questioning the second time, Omaima gave a glimpse of the reason which could have forced her to kill her husband. She said once they were married, Bill started showing his violent side, physically and sexually abusing her during their short union, but she still denied killing him.
You know, and tied me up, so he said in my shoulder like this, right here in my chest.
Fat on your shoulder?
Yeah, and I couldn't breathe. I didn't know, I didn't believe he's dead. He can't breathe.
After further pressing, Omaima accepted having killed her husband, but now she left them with another unsolved mystery.
I have compassion.
I'm sorry?
I have compassion. I don't remember how I killed him.
You don't remember?
All I remember, I get up, like I said, and I find him in a trash bag. I wish I knew how I killed him, though. Something inside me told me that I had to do it, like demons.
By now, it was becoming clear to the officers that Omaima was suffering from mental illness, possibly because of her traumatic past. She then claimed something that further corroborated the suspicion.
2 women, there was blood all over them, and the one can say, he must die, he must die.
Her demand made it clear to the officers that either Omaima genuinely had some serious mental issues, or she was pretending to have some to reduce her sentence.
It was almost as if she was grabbing for anything she could to minimize her involvement in this horrific crime.
Their suspicion she was only claiming to be psychotic to reduce the punishment was further corroborated by the fact that this was not the first time she'd committed something like this.
She produced a handgun and threatened to kill him if he didn't give her more money.
These speculations became even more concrete when her medical report arrived. In the report, it was clear who was the attacker and who was the victim between Omaima and Bill.
The cuts on her body and her feet, her hands, her legs were consistent with somebody that had dismembered a human body.
This report also revealed that Omaima was not forced to get intimate. Then her psychiatrist made a shocking claim that left everyone in nothing but horror, and everyone was forced to doubt their loved ones.
She stated that she had cooked some of his ribs in the oven, put some barbecue sauce on it, and actually tasted it.
She said it tasted sweet, just like I like it.
Omaima was charged with first-degree murder, cannibalism, and evidence of premeditation for killing Bill for financial gain. The trial that followed was nothing short of a media spectacle. The gruesome details of the crime captured the public's morbid fascination. Omaima's trial began on December 1st, 1992, almost 1 year after Bill Nelson's murder. Even in the court, she claimed that it was her mind playing games on her and that the hallucinations had made her do this. She claimed that she couldn't even recall the moment of the murder or anything related to it.
I don't know where to go or who to call or what to do. And I got mixed, confused. I don't know who I am or who's that person I'm not related to. I thought he's a stranger. I thought, what am I doing in this place?
However, her ex-boyfriend, Robert Hansen, to whom she'd also reached out to on the day of the murder, described a different story about her.
And she pulled the gun out, and she put the gun to my face and said she wanted, for me to give her money.
Omaima's psychologist also testified in her favor and put forward the state of her mental health. She explained how she was becoming delusional.
I found Omaima to be soft-spoken. I found her to be rather childlike. She was frequently very sad and often tearful. She began to fantasize that she was descended from ancient Egyptians.
The defense never argued that Omaima did not commit the murder, but instead, they focused on the fact that she committed this crime due to hallucinations and because Bill was abusive to her. According to Omaima, the voices in her head not only urged her to kill her husband, but also directed her to dismember his body, an attempt to escape from Bill once and forever.
The ancient Egyptians believed that if your body is scattered, you will not go to the afterlife. So she cut him up.
She was making sure that if she got to the afterlife, he wouldn't be there.
However, she refused to explain why she cooked him.
She bragged to her psychiatrist that the ribs were the best part, that nothing was sweeter than the taste of her husband. She wanted his money and not him. That doesn't mean she had to consume him.
Omaima consistently maintained that she did not intend to murder Bill. On the other hand, the prosecutors pressed for murder charges, and she was found guilty of second-degree murder by the jury on January 12, 1993, after deliberation. She was also found guilty of assault with a deadly weapon for her attempted robbery of Robert. Omaima, then 24 years old, was sentenced to 25 years to life in the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, California. Omaima Ari Nelson's story is one of tragedy intertwined with horror, a true crime tale that continues to resonate as one of the most disturbing cases in California history. With about 130 pounds of Bill's body still missing, she was even compared to the famous serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer.
The Jeffrey Dahmer case had just occurred before this, and that was kind of in the back of everybody's mind at that time. Are we going to turn up another Jeffrey Dahmer?
Although Omaima never confessed the key details of the account, the officers theorized what could have gone wrong on that fateful day.
We theorized that he entered into a consensual bondage session with Omaima. She tied him to the headboard and probably wanted some type of money or access to his wealth.
With Omaima Ari Nelson safely behind bars, Californians breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that one less dangerous figure roamed their streets. Yet, even in prison, Omaima fought to regain her freedom. She first applied for parole in 2006, only to be met with a firm denial. Undeterred, she made another attempt in 2011. But once again, her request was swiftly rejected, much to the relief of investigators who believed that her release would only spell more danger.
She should not be paroled. She's a very much danger to society because she's actually now doing the same stuff since she's been in prison that she did in the outside world. She got married to a gentleman that she knew at the time of Mr. Nelson's death. He was in his 80s at the time. Just a few years back, he died. He left her a large sum of money.
For the moment, Omaima remains unable to touch any money she might hope to claim on the outside. But if granted parole, her access to freedom and funds could change everything. With financial means and her freedom restored, she might be able to rebuild a life beyond the prison walls, something that has long haunted the victims' families and those who remember her chilling crime. In 2026, she'll once again be eligible for a parole hearing, a decision that will ultimately determine her fate. This case highlighted how traumatic experiences in childhood could lead to mental health issues in the future. With this, we ask you, what do you think about this case? Do you think Omaima was actually psychotic and killed her husband in a rage? Or did she simply kill him for the sake of his money? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. If you found today's video interesting, please consider subscribing to our channel, M7 Crime Storytime. Hit that like button and share our videos. Also, if you have any crime that you'd like us to cover, leave us a message in the comment section below. Until then, stay safe and keep exploring our channel.